It's time for another lap around the track with all the latest in motorsports interviews. Sometimes we get bent feelings, but we can't wait for the Bent Fender Podcast with your hosts, Nathan Conway and Wes Llewellyn.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of the Bent Fender Podcast. I'm Nathan Porkchop Conway. With me, as always, is Wes, the U-Haul Llewellyn. And that is important. That is important for what we're going to talk about a little bit today. But
It is.
Hey, man, we're back. We're back in the seat. We're back on the mic. Back on the air. Back in black.
I don't know any of the back things.
Back to the future.
Yep, there you go.
We're back to the future. Because it was the past last time we left.
It was.
It was the alternate 1985.
Darn
we
Libyans.
Yeah, that's right. They are the Libyans. That started it all, man.
They did.
Listen, we are back in the seat here, and we know we've had a couple of 3-week hiatus, but been a few personal problems going on, and like I said, we won't go into all the details, but Wes has since moved to a new domicile.
I have.
And that's helped out a lot.
And you know, as much as we love racing, as much as we love the podcast, as much as we love everyone who's involved in this, sometimes life just happens.
It does happen.
And you know, that has to take precedence sometimes. And we just, with everything that was going on, we needed to take just a break to at least give me a breather and let me get a little bit of stability back under my feet. So we're there, and you know, there was it's a good thing, and we're going to continue to do what we do, and we're going to continue to talk to who we talk to, and provide you with content the best we can throughout the rest of the year.
We don't have very long left.
We don't, and we understand that holidays are coming.
Yeah, we are going to hit the Christmas season.
And as holidays happen, again, life takes precedence, family takes precedence. So, same idea of having kind of a loose schedule between now and the beginning of the year. So we want to bring you content every week, and we're going to do the best we can. But if we, need to take a breather again, just bear with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're planning on it being a regular thing or taking off for extended periods of time. But, again, jobs get in the way and life gets in the way, and including trying to find a new place to live. And, again, that worked out, didn't know how well it was going to work out there for a few minutes, and it worked out exceedingly well. And
it has.
It's been a way better situation, and, better attitudes, better things going on. That's the main thing. Lots
of smiles, lots of happiness happening. So that's only going to benefit you guys, because when we're in a better headspace, then you guys get better content. So
absolutely, and that's the thing. Keeping the amount of content, keeping the quality of content, and again, we've always heard that it's not maybe quality over quantity all the time. That's what you need. We don't need to put out 52 episodes and just that are boring, which they're not. They haven't been. But, to keep from that, we need to put out the best episodes we can when we can put them out.
And we want you guys to look forward to them. We want you guys to be engaged and involved, just like we've said from day one. And we're going to continue to do that. And, we actually, the guest we have today reached out to me before things kind of got hectic and wanted to be on the show, expressed an interest. And we absolutely love it when people do that, and we want more people to do that, because this is about you guys. This is about your story. This is about your history, where you've been, where you're going. And he reached out, and we just couldn't get things to line up schedule-wise, and then, here we are. It is worked out, and it's going to be a great day.
It is a great day, man. And, we've talked about this, and people that are excited about these episodes coming out, and people that wanted these episodes to come out. Well, there's two of them here today, man. Carl and Blake Schock, man. That they love listening to the podcast, love fans of what we're doing, and think it's a great thing for racing. And you know what? We agree.
Blake has been not only a good friend to the podcast, but a fan and a friend to Nathan and I, in general. And we have bounced ideas off of him. We've used him as a sounding board. We've asked his opinion. We've asked him for all kinds of things. So, we're grateful and happy that he's been there to play the part in this podcast that he has.
Right.
Now, he will not come on the microphone. He has told me without a shadow of a doubt that he will not be a guest.
I guess Carl's going to do all the talking.
He will, but we will absolutely, take the contributions that Blake gives us the way that he does, and we appreciate him being part of it as much as Carl and the rest of the Shock family.
Well, one disclaimer there too is that if you're thinking about coming on the podcast and you thought about it and you're like, nah, I don't want to do it because I'm nervous or whatever else. Listen, there's an amount of nervousness on my side of the mic as well. Whenever I sit down to do an interview, because here's the thing, there's a lot of unknowns just for the simple fact that you don't know how the conversation is going to go. Maybe we haven't talked in a long time, and we're starting up a conversation that who knows how far it's going to go, where it's going to go.
Right.
So the good thing about it is that's not a bad thing. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing. The thing of it is that we can keep just keep everyone engaged. And I think I almost see it start the same. And I think we talked about this with Eddie Campbell as well, is, it starts out with, a little bit of nervousness. Everybody's kind of, hey, which way should I go here? Should I talk? I don't know. And then, most of the time, once we hit that first break, 9 times out of 10, we come back, everybody's relaxed, everything starts flowing well. And, it just works out.
Well, and that's, as the engineer behind the episodes, normally I'm not involved in the interviews. Sometimes I do, but it's just not my playground to play in, and I give you that space because you enjoy doing it, and I think it works out well. But getting to watch you guys, and I can see the nerves. I can see how there's some shyness happening. There's some not really being used to talking into a microphone or hearing yourself in headphones and things like that. And I see where all that happens at the beginning, and then as soon as it kind of washes away, and you can see the shoulders are a little bit more relaxed, and the conversation just picks up from there. And it's just kind of incredible how that does play out like that. So
it does, and again, not a bad thing. Okay,
not at all.
No, it's okay to be nervous. I mean, heck, I do it in the staging lanes every time before I go race, and I've heard from guys who race nationally and big money races, big time cars and things like that. They're like, I'm always nervous in the staging lane as well, because you don't know how things are going to go, you don't know how things are going to play out, and but once you get on the track, it's time to go to work. And that's the way it is with the mic. We when we get behind these mics, it's a little bit uneasiness right at the first few seconds or whatever, but
right.
maybe slip right back into doing what we've been doing and we know how to do, and it's just a good time. It always ends up in a good time. You can't say that it doesn't, because it always has.
And we've learned a lot, and we continue to talk about that, how we've learned how to do this better, and we help our guests a lot, and there's the 2-hour episode that you hear generally takes a little bit longer than that, because we spend time talking to the guests before the show and during the breaks and everything, and just hanging out, and it's helping establish that comfort level and breaking the ice and making it to where just go ahead and blow on that.
That's right.
I mean, nobody cares.
No, that's okay.
It's fine. But
this is my show.
It is. That's true.
Breaker 19.
But we spend a lot of time just making sure that everybody's having a good time and they're enjoying being here. And we've talked about this in a board meeting with the Motorsports Council. We want to make sure that the people that are here, we want to make sure that people that are at the Motorsports Festival are there because they want to be there.
Right.
And that's a big thing. We just want to celebrate this and everything that we do.
Well, we look forward to hearing from Carl for sure, and you never know, he might look for Blake to some pointers. You never know what some stories or things like that.
Blake could totally shock me. He could absolutely just take the reins and grab the mic from Carl.
Did you mean to say it like that?
Maybe. I'm not going to
terrible at puns. Man.
I'm not going to fully take credit for all that pun, but yes, as I was saying it out loud, I was like there it is.
Well, look forward to hearing what those guys have to say, and going to cover a lot of topics. I always cover the state of racing, and he's kind of on the inside of things, being a flagman at Windy Hollow Speedway, but growing up around the racetrack, all the dirt tracks and different things like that. He and his brothers, and family got some pretty famous legends in his family, and we hope to ask him about a few of those. So that's going to be pretty cool. In Eddie Jug Colley, and also Clint Colley. as well as CW Cavett Starrett. So.
Well, and as we do our due diligence before the episodes, so that way we learn a little bit about the people, so I don't make stupid mistakes. I didn't know. I didn't know that was their family. And,
I'd heard maybe some connections there, but I didn't know how it all fit together. So we're going to ask them. So we kind of know a little bit about it, and we're going to ask them how it all fits together and see what some stories that they may bring up on some of those guys. So pretty cool deal. One thing I want to move to real quick is Motorsports Festival, man, rolling along.
It is.
Doing pretty good. Had our first official board meeting, and like I said, those are closed-door meetings, so you don't get to hear what happened. No, I'm just playing. No, a lot of good things happened, and it was a pleasant board meeting, and those guys are really, really excited about what we're doing. So if we're exciting the board, that means hopefully we're exciting the public. And, I think it's going to be a good time.
It's going to be a hell of a time, and it's like everything else, huge learning experience, huge learning curve for us.
Yeah, I've never put on a festival.
Well, I have, but not like this. I've not done a motorsports festival like this, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a fantastic time, and we can't wait for you to see every single detail because it's just going to be mind blowing.
Well, it will be, and the thing, be honest with you, the biggest thing we're running into right now, besides making sure we get enough sponsorship money, but is. People have all these ideas and they're great. They are great. The only thing is we've got to try to, and one of our board members, Steve Johnson, said this, it's not, and like I said earlier, it's not just about quantity. It's about quality. Presenting the things you can. Again, guys, it's not 10 days, okay? It's not a 10-day festival like it used to be. It's 3 days. With some lead-up events and things like that. There's going to be some different charity things going on. But, again, the festival itself, 3 days, kind of like the barbecue festival is, but it's going to be, we've got a limited amount of time, and it's by design that way. And it's because 10 days got non-sustainable. And so we've got to do something. We've got to put together a model. And we think 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, pretty good model. It's kind of a built-in schedule, right? It's a weekend. So, by design, it's going to be 3 days. So we can't stuff every idea into 3 days. We just can't do it.
No,
there's only 24 hours a day, and we just can't do it.
And it's, logistically, as cool as it would be to have everything, we have to make sure that we have volunteers in place. We have to make sure that we have, things in place to make the events happen and run on time and keep things moving along. Because as you all know, the last thing we want anybody to have to do is stand around and wait.
Right. There should be something to do all the time.
Right. So there are going to be lead-up events. We've been working with some people around town about doing some pretty cool things that are going to be tie-ins to the Motorsports Festival that just don't happen those 3 days.
Right.
So make sure that you're keeping in touch with us. You're following us along on Facebook at ODC Motorsports on Facebook. Is at the Owensboro-Davis County Motorsports Council's page,
right.
And that's where we are posting the information about the Motorsports Festival as it happens. It's only an event on Facebook, the Motorsports Festival, so the rest of the information will come from the council.
Right, and so make sure you stay tuned to the council page. That way, and we are the council, so that's a good thing about that, is that's how we can keep you informed. And if you need to talk to us personally, contact Wes, contact myself, Blake Smith. We'd be happy to
any of the board members.
Right, any of the board members. Make sure that that you guys stay informed because, and if you have questions, comments, stuff that you'd like to see, contacts of people that we need to get a hold of. Hey, let us know because here it is, December. It's middle of December, and I know it sounds like that this doesn't happen for another 8 months, 8 or 8.5 months. 8.5 months is going to go by before you know it.
It is, and if you want to be involved, if you want to be a volunteer. If you want to be a sponsor, we will absolutely sit down and talk to you about those things because we're going to need help. We're asking for help. We are not afraid to do that.
No, we need everyone's help because this is a community effort, and while 7 guys, are trying to put it on, 7, 8 guys are trying to put it on. It's a community effort. It's all for you guys, and every bit of it that we're doing is not for us.
Nope.
We are a 501c3 company. That means we're a not-for-profit organization. That means we are not taking any money. We weren't going to do it in the first place, but this makes sure that people know we're not going to do it. We can't do it. We're not going to do it.
No, we don't want to have this be a money making event. Any money that is given to us for the Motorsports Festival will go to putting on the Motorsports Festival.
That's it.
So,
and if it doesn't go for this one, that's the good thing about having sustainability. And again, that it can go for it's also good seed money to start the 2020 festival.
Right.
So
absolutely.
that's the beautiful part about it. But the good thing about that is that with all those ideas and people coming up with stuff that like downtown go-kart races or this, that, or the other, golf tournaments and things. These are great ideas, but it's just one of those things where the beauty of that is in the coming years that ensures sustainability because people want to see that.
Well, we also have to prove that, this is our first year doing this. It's been 13 years since the Motorsports Festival happened. We've not run into naysayers, as it were, but we've got to prove that we can do this. Not only to ourselves, but to our sponsors, to you guys, and the people who may want to wag a finger at us and hope we don't do it well. So, we want to make it to where we can get it done, get it taken care of. And if we do well with it this year, which we believe wholeheartedly that we're going to do exceedingly well with it,
right,
then that's just going to add steam and give us more room for the following years and to make it even bigger and better.
Well, I kind of think it's one of those things where we're gonna put it all together. We're gonna turn the key and start the engine, and it's kind of gonna do its thing. And it's going to end up being... Yeah, that's what we hope. We know that there's going to be a lot of work involved in it, and there already has been, and there's way, way, way more to do than what we've done so far, trust me. But it's one of those things where we hope everything runs well. We hope that everybody enjoys theirself, get a nice little, Friday night of dirt track racing, a nice, beautiful day on Saturday of family fun and education and things like that. And also the same thing on Sunday with the breakfast, the rally, the autocross event, and also the asphalt race that night, bookended by great events.
Right.
We're hoping, and again, we're kicking around some things, so that everything is not set in stone yet. I mean, there's a few things that are pretty much that's what's going to happen, but there's some stuff that could happen. There's stuff that we hope happens. There's stuff that everything. It's all planned out, and we've got to make it all work. So
absolutely.
So again, it's not 100% set in stone yet. Everything is being worked out.
So we talked about it a moment ago. We talked about sponsors and how sponsors are important, and you guys love the fact that we celebrate sponsors. So we can't do this podcast without ours, and that would be Lori Kimball with Home Realty Incorporated, Willie's Carbon Dyno Shop, and High Octane Racewear, Wraps, Apparel, Graphics, all of the above.
Right, and mentioning those guys again, twofold sponsorship for High Octane, as they are one of the title sponsors for the Owensboro-Davis County Motorsports Festival, and as well as Renegade Race Fuels and the Country Station 92.5 WBKR. Can't thank them enough for coming on. I mean, we know it's going to be good already because BKR believes in what we're going to do, and the race. What's better than having the racing station on our side and on our team, man? That's a cool deal. So
absolutely.
Our other podcast sponsors here and sponsors that help us do things: Mach 5 Race Cars, Parts and Carts, Fairview IT Management, Martin's Towing and Recovery, Glenstone Construction, Slingshot Media, Red Star Graphics.
Yep.
Yeah, can't forget them. If you want to find us on the web, you can find us on Facebook. That's Conway Racing Team, Bluegrass Motorsports Media, and Owensboro-Davis County Motorsports Council, ODMC. What is it?
ODC Motorsports.
Yeah, ODC Motorsports. Yeah. As well, yeah, that's right. ODCmotorsports.com and also ConwayRacingTeam.com. The BenFenderPodcast.com, right? So
we talked about not saying
hey, man, we've got it all.
24 websites.
Yeah, I know, but we got to get it all out there. But anyway, find us there. You can find us on Twitter at Conway Race Team, Instagram Conway Racing. So find us on iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, Podbean.com, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, YouTube, Overcast, Radio Public, iHeartRadio. We've carpet bombed it.
Yep.
And this is going to help us. Being able to have social media outlets again for promotion. It's not just printing T-shirts. It's not just printing programs. It's not just putting up banners.
Right.
It's promotion, and that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely.
That's good stuff. So, You got anything to add right now?
I don't believe I do. I think it's not a cold day outside. It's not a warm day, but we don't want to keep Carl and Blake waiting.
No. We making them stand outside?
Well, sometimes you have to. No, they're
Got to put them on ice.
Just heard a car pull up, so I'm gonna bet it's them.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, we will go ahead and throw it to the old first commercial break there. Come back on the other side with Carl Schock.
Whether you're buying or selling a home, you want to ensure your needs are met. Lori Kimball with Home Realty Incorporated is the realtor for you. In today's fast-paced society, it's important to have someone on your side that will give you the care and treatment you deserve. Lori wants to build a relationship with you, and it's her full-service commitment focusing on your family's wants and needs that sets her head and shoulders above the rest. You can contact Lori today at 270-315-1468. That's 270-315-1468. Or you can find her on the web at www.lorikimball.com. Call her today to unlock doors for your tomorrow by building a relationship with a realtor who's here for you.
And we're back from the break, and we told you guys there's another good show this week, and sitting here with Carl Schock. Carl, appreciate you coming on the Bent Fender podcast and being one of our guests and coming out and hanging out with us.
Thank y'all for having us, and thank y'all for doing this podcast.
Yeah, you say us because Blake's sitting over there in the wing, but he ain't gonna. We can't get him to talk. I don't know what his deal is.
He's just shy, quiet.
Well, Carl, you got to carry the flag for the Schock family today, and what we usually do is we take it all the way back, man. We take it all the way back to where it started. So just started off there at day one. How'd you guys get involved in racing, and how'd you grow up around it? And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, my mom and them, my mom's side of the family was always on the dirt track side.
Right.
And then my dad's side was always on the drag racing side. And they brought us up around it. And, of course, my papa Jug, my papa Mikey's always been around the dirt track side.
Right.
And then my papa Danny was a drag racer. I took more interest in the dirt track side of it. Mm-hmm. Blake and Cody, they're more of a horsepower drag racing side. But we always went with Papa Jug. They traveled everywhere. Friday night was Chandler. Mm-hmm. Saturday was Mike Henry. I was barely young enough to remember that, but Sunday was Windy Hollow. And it just kind of stuck with us. I mean, me and Blake, we'll still travel to all around to all the racetracks if we can, but we like traveling and enjoying the races.
Well, the good thing about circle track racing is that whether you're a drag race guy or a circle track guy, there's a little something for everybody because there are two straightaways. So so you get to use a little bit of that horsepower sometimes.
That's true.
Hey, man, you mentioned somebody real quick, and I just want to go ahead and talk about him because it's one of the legends of the sport around here, and that's Jug Cawley. I don't know if there's anybody around today that probably don't know that cowboy hat and those tennis shoes, man. And tell us a little bit about Jug.
Well, for one, the cowboy hat, I don't think he ever took off. I think I've seen a few times that he sleeps in it. But I don't know, he was a legend that everybody always enjoyed, whether they booed him or they cheered for him. He was always one that would give you pointers or try to do anything he could to help you. Him and Clint was very successful. Mm-hmm. Which that played a key role into all of mine and my brother's racing. My papa Jug built Cody's first car or second car and got him really going into rusty boat racing. And as we know today, the rules kept changing.
Right.
So papa still did it the old way, and we could go to the junkyard and go here, go there to get these parts. And as that kind of progressed, at that time, we couldn't afford to keep going.
Right.
And Cody kind of got out of that side and went into another side with someone else, and which Papa was still there to back him and help him what he needs to do or anything like that. And I think a lot of people like that about Papa Jug is they could always go down there to Easy Buy, talk to him or call him, whatever they could do, and he was always there at the racetrack to help.
Well, he absolutely was. I mean, they had Jug's Corner over there on that side of the pit grandstands, and always have his truck sitting up there, and was a staple at Windy Hollow Speedway, and even though it goes back before my time, back in the old coupe days, and I think that those coupes were iconic with what he did, and he was actually immortalized on one of the Race On shirts, which was a pretty cool deal.
Yes, it was. I wished I was around to see the coupe days. I've heard many stories and seen pictures, and there's very rare footage of it. I've seen a few videos, and it really takes you back to a good time when everybody enjoyed the racing and got along, and which we still do that today, but sometimes things get in between there. And I wish we could go back to racing on the racetrack, friends in the stands, and all that good stuff.
Well, it is a little different time now, and I think a lot of the times though that there is still a lot of that coming back.
Yes,
is being able to race on a racetrack, talk, hang out during the week. Back when though, you didn't have many classes like we do now, and guys were man, that they were bigger than life back then, and even in Clint's time. Whenever Clint was racing, and I remember Clint racing, and how, that was one of the guys to beat every week. It was Clint Cawley, and the Cawley family has always had a strong presence, especially around here.
For sure, and of course my uncle on my mom's side, Cabot's there, so it was always a battle between one of them two, and I don't know, I loved watching them two race together, and they can fight, whatever, and then they go back to the trailers and let's do that again. So
and it's funny you say that, because there are many battles that's happened on those high banks at Windy Hollow Speedway between Cabot Sterrett, Clint Cawley. I mean, guys that wasn't going to give an inch.
Yeah.
And being family as they were, they're definitely going to give an inch to each other.
Right, and they'd beat and bang and let the best man win, and fortunately, there was very many good races side by side. Sometimes Chad Boone would sneak in the middle there and get them. But, yeah, they would always be, I guess, I don't know, not really enemies or whatever you want to call it on the racetrack. But
frenemies?
Yeah.
But, yeah, and that's another guy. Back, they call Clint the King of Clay. Several championships on dirt. And back in that same amount of time, you had Junior Horn. You had Chad Boone, that was the old pure stock class.
Yeah.
And man, one of the most competitive classes there ever was around here. And watching the battles between the 101 and the 4 and the 88, man, it was great racing. And I think we still see great racing today.
Yes.
But it just was that old school racing.
Mm-hmm. That they was all friends. They do anything for each other, but on the racetrack, neither one of them was going to give an inch.
Mm-mm.
And
well, that's how you achieve things. You know what I mean? You got to be hard on that racetrack.
Yeah.
And you'll help somebody rebuild a car. You'll help fix things and what have you. And we can all go back and slap up each other on the back when it's over with. But being on that racetrack, I mean, you don't get to be a champion. You don't get especially all those guys were without being able to put it to the floor on the track.
Right. They was there to win and win championships, and they wasn't going to let each other come in between there. So,
well, I mean, it's great to see that generations down the line now still involved in racing. When did you all get involved? Like, hey, we're going to get our own car. We want to have a car. We want to start driving. How did it all come about?
what year was?
I told you we should have got him a microphone.
Let's see. Cody started racing when he was 14.
I think I remember that.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what year it was, but Cody started out in Rusty Boat and worked his way up to Cruiser.
Mm-hmm.
He went asphalt racing for a year with Roger Dow. And then Blake got into Cody's old Rusty Boat car.
Right.
And got into racing. And I didn't get into racing until I was 15, 16 in go-karts. We done that for a couple years. And then, not this past season, but 2 years ago, we decided after Papaw passed that we would do a tribute car to him. And it wasn't a very good year, but the car turned out great.
Oh, man, it was a slick-looking car.
And everybody liked the tribute to him, so we tried to do what we could and run when we could. We picked up one heat win, and I stuffed it in the wall in the feature, but I think that was about the last time it was ran.
Hey, man, it's just sheet metal. It's all right.
Yeah.
You can fix it. But have you always, everybody just been on the same cars, and you guys always help out each other, and no matter who's driving or who's trying to wheel the car?
Yeah, we've always been the family side of things, and we've always done it together. When Cody ran, we was always working on his car, and then as he got older, married, he kind of got out of the driver's seat, and he liked helping more. Blake, he likes helping out a lot, and he liked to drive too, but I mostly like to drive. I'm not the big mechanic. I'll leave that to the big brothers.
The thing about being an owner driver, though, is you got to work on them to drive them.
Right.
But it is a lot more fun driving than it is turning over wrenches.
Right. And now that I've been working at a racetrack since I was 12, so pretty much half of my life I've been on both sides of the fence, and that started with Scott Slayton out at Windy Hollow.
But, I mean, like I said, man, you've always hung around the racetrack, so it's just kind of a natural fit that you would be able to get in there and help out, do different things, and transition into being a flagman now, and it's a pretty neat deal to be able to do that. I mean, you're in control basically of the races,
Right.
So I mean that's a pretty neat little deal.
Yeah, that's always been my main goal, was to be a flagman, and John Westerfield kind of got me into that. He'd come over to watch some of the bigger races like Volusia or Eldora, and I would always have a mini flag set, and I would go out and practice, and he'd show me things. And then as I got older, he was still flagging, and he asked me if I wanted to flag with him one night, stand up there, and I really liked the view of that and helping him. And then Curtis Howard took over Windy, and John stepped down, and he gave Curtis my name, and they let me flag one night, and then he gave me the call like the next week, asked me if I wanted to flag, so it took off from there.
We'll talk about that first night being up there with John, and I know you're probably nervous, and you're like, well, I don't know what's going to go on, but we're gonna make the best of it here, and it had to be fun.
Yes, it was very fun, but at the same time I was thinking, well, what happens if a car hits this thing? Or because the first night, I think it was Brad Brown, he hit the wall right in front of us, and the whole flag stand was shaking. And now, as it gets older, now just the wind will move it. So it's sometimes uncomfortable feeling, but I don't know, I enjoy it, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, that's true. I mean, at least you be doing something you love. That's the main thing. But,
Yes.
Is it? Do you sometimes kind of get in your own head about flagging a race, or have you done it long enough now that you're not really nervous about it anymore? Or because it's definitely a hard job, and everybody's watching.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody is watching up there, and I don't get as nervous anymore. When the bigger cars, the late models come in the first time, I was still a little nervous. Sprint cars come in, the midgets, they're a little bit different, and you definitely don't want to take your eyes off the track on them.
Right.
But for the most part now, I'm pretty comfortable, and hopefully one day get in some bigger shows.
Well, now, being a flagman, and you guys don't run a two-man flag crew up there, it's mostly just you. Do you find it hard to, be able to watch one end of the track or the other end of the track, or do you kind of rely on the tower to kind of tell you things?
At Windy Hollow, we have a pretty good team. The tower, they're usually just scoring the cars. There's 2 or 3 of us, me, Wayne Kimbley, Bryce Jewell, and then this year, Trevor kind of helped out. So I usually leave them 2 to watch the racetrack wherever they are, be front stretch or the back stretch, and I'll try to keep an eye all the way around the racetrack.
Right.
And it's never a one-man call. We'll talk about it and go out of there. It's usually 3 out of 3 sees what we all see. That's another thing. From the flag stand, there's a totally different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Not very many people believe that.
No.
But I've been in the stands, I've been in the infield, and I've been in the flag stand now, and the flag man still has the best spot. I know there's some controversial calls, but when I see what I see, it's hard to overturn that.
Yep.
And it's very interesting of the views you can see from up there.
Well, I guess that's a good benefit because you are right. And if anybody's ever went and stood in a flag stand and looked at a racetrack, I mean, being 25 feet, 30 feet back in the grandstand, different point of view. Being down in the infield, different point of view. You can see the turns different. On the flag stand, I mean, you're just looking straight down the straightaways. It's hard to see the angles of the turns.
Right.
And, I think that's where it gets very important to have that good crew out there. And, you talk about bad calls get made sometimes, and everybody's human, and that's okay. Because, I mean, there's going to be mistakes made.
Right.
Nobody's perfect. But the good thing about it is when you've got you watching down the front straightaway, somebody in the turn watching, and you guys can confer and say, hey, this is what I saw. What did you guys see? I mean, I see that as a benefit.
Right. And that's one thing Jimmy and him's tried to do out there is take away some of the, I guess, controversial calls or stuff like that. But it was just a two-man show, and Jimmy didn't like that point of view. So he added a third person. That way it's not tied at 1-1, or now it's that the last man's always going to have the final say.
Right.
So I think that helped out a lot this year.
Well, and again, I always see it as a benefit because if I'm a competitor on that racetrack and something happens and you happen to see X happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, Bryce is down here in the infield in turn 1 and he sees Y happen. Well, then we need to see what Z's point of view is, and if X and Y agree, then I say 2-1. It's there's the call.
Right.
That's the way you do it. And you've got to. And I think you guys have noticed this, and we've talked to Jimmy several times. But whatever call gets made, you got to stick by it. I mean,
right. That's one thing we've been pretty good about and consistent about is when we make the call, we go back to that call if there happens again, and just try to stay consistent with that. And I felt like we've done a pretty good job with that.
Well, the good thing about this is, man, is that we're getting a unique perspective on, a little bit. We can talk to drivers, which have been a driver. We can talk to crew members, and it's guys have been crew members.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have got to flag races and be able to be an official,
right?
To see things, be on the inside of how things work, and laying out the night and different things to keep things moving. So I think that's pretty neat in and of itself.
Yeah, and I do a little bit more than flag out there. I help Misty out a lot in the office, and pretty much whatever them guys need, I'll try to help them. Like I said, it started when Scott was out there, and that time my whole family was out there working with them and getting the track ready, and it's amazing how many hours it takes to go into a racetrack.
Talk about Scott Slayton for a minute, man. He's a character in and of itself, and you kind of got your start under him, and a little bit later with Curtis. But talk about Scott a little bit.
Scott, he was always good to us, and I think he done a great job at Windy Hollow and did some improvements. To me, that was probably one of the best tracks we've had in years out there. And like I started out in the concession stand out there working, popping popcorn, and every once in a while I'd go out and watch the races, and it brought back old memories of some of the side-by-side racing and not follow the leader or anything like that. And Scott was always looking for improvement. Mm-hmm. And I think that helped a lot. Within the racing community itself, he always tried to get out of the racetrack and see where else he could help. Whether it was Cedar Ridge or Nebo, he'd always try to work with them.
Right. Well, and again, that's important. And each track promoter is different. You've been there under Scott Slayton. You've been there with Clint. when he had it there. Curtis Hyatt and now Jimmy Westerfield. And do you see differences in each one, or
Yes.
do you see consistencies in each one as well?
Some things are consistent, but there's a lot of differences of how they want to run the racetrack. I think they's all still great promoters and ran the racetrack well. Clint, unfortunately, didn't have a very good year. I mean, they ran 14 races and rained out 14 times, and that was unfortunately just not a good year. Passing to Ryan Peters and all that. And then Curtis, he took over, and I think he brought back some life to Windy Hollow after that year. And of course, Misty and Jimmy started helping out with him the second or third year he had it. And then helped. I think they took off and knew what they wanted. And after Curtis decided to step down, they knew they wanted the racetrack. And I think that's another key thing to Windy Hollow was having the Westerfields. When they did the Bob Westerfield Memorials, they was always huge races. And that's what they try to do now is make every show a big race.
Well, and Windy Hollow doesn't run a full schedule like a lot of tracks do. And when we say full schedule, they do have a full schedule of racing, but it's not weekly.
Yes.
It's a couple times a month, and maybe you have a little bit more flexibility to put on those big shows when you can take some weeks off in between and let the racers reset, let the crowd reset a little bit. Do you see it as a benefit with a partial schedule?
I have. This year it was kind of up and down year. They'd give, which we had a few rainouts, so it didn't put shows back to back. And I think people enjoyed the weeks off, and they could go out to this racetrack or this racetrack and still have money to do whatever else they needed.
Right.
And I think everybody likes the just a few times a month. That way it gives them family time if they want it, or time to work on the race car and not have to contend every week.
Well, I think, being a racer myself, and not that I get to run a full schedule as much anymore due to work, but, I remember we were running weekly, and, having to, it's the weekly grind, man, of trying to get that car ready and trying to get everything put all back together, depending on what happened that week.
Right.
Especially, trying to make it out there every single week, and for these points races. And I don't know if it's just a different time where that works better now, or if it's one of those things where, it may be good for this track, but not as good for another track.
Right. I don't know. It's weird thinking about it, of how one track can run every week and have this many cars and this many people, and then this one runs once or twice a month and car count's way down. But I know some people, they still try to run 2 or 3 tracks in a week.
Right.
And I can only imagine the grind nowadays.
Yeah.
Because I know the man's having to work twice as hard at his regular job and then try to figure out what to do with the race car. And so I commend all the drivers that still does that.
Man, I remember when it was one of the nights that we try to go racing on Saturday night and Sunday nights, and trying to get the car all ready to go for Saturday night, and then have to switch things over and fix this, fix that. It was half the night job trying to get it done so you didn't have to work on it all the next day.
Right.
And still not have time to do anything else.
Yeah, and then if something was to break Saturday night, you're up all night trying to fix it, get ready for Sunday. And it's just not happening a lot anymore like that. There's still very few that do that. And I know that's a lot of work, and hopefully the promoters are paying that work off for them.
Well, you guys can speak to that a little bit because, I think what it takes, and what I'm getting at is it takes a crew of people, and
Yes.
It takes people behind you, and it is, it is doable as a one-man show, but it's a lot better when you have crew members behind you and family that can throw in and say, okay, man, we tore the spindle off the thing. We got to get a new spindle back on it before we go racing tomorrow night, and everybody pitches in, jumps in and helps try to locate the parts and go for it.
Right. Yeah, family or crew definitely helps. That's another thing that's kind of winding away. Most crews now is just 2 or 3 people. which I know some other drivers and their crew will help if needed. But nowadays you just don't see as many crew members like you used to. I know some of the bigger ones like Bill Mormon and all Melvin and all them guys, or James Dockery. They've all got good crews behind them, family supporting them. Right. And then you have some 1 or 2 man shows like Mike Boone, and he still does it weekly, Saturday, Sunday night, and he just loves what he does.
Right, and is successful at it.
Very
that's
successful.
for sure. You can't take that away from Mike Boone, because that guy works hard all week at his regular job, and then gets those race cars, one race car, and runs 2 nights a week consistently. And has done very well for himself.
Yes, he has. And I know that probably not a very easy job. And his wife Shirley, she absolutely loves racing.
Mm-hmm. That's important too.
Yeah,
that's important too.
Yeah, he's got a good one there.
Well, I'll tell you what, buddy. We're going to go ahead and take our first break, and we'll be back on the other side, and we'll keep chatting here.
Alrighty.
All right.
Are you looking for a hometown barbershop specializing in the best haircuts in Western Kentucky? Master Barber Chad Thompson has everything you need to keep you looking sharp for not only your special occasions, but for every day as well. Offering a line of haircut products to take care of your hair between cuts. Walk-ins are welcome, and you're always going to find friends and neighbors at Chad's. You can find Chad at 10655 Highway 764 in Whitesville, Kentucky, or you can give him a call at 270-903-8183.
And we're back from the break, still sitting here at Fairview IT Management. Carl, Shock, buddy, before the break we were talking about a little bit of differences in the way it used to be back when you started hanging around the racetrack, and I can totally agree with that, because I remember those days as well. But having less people, less help these days, and do you feel there's something that's keeping it from being a lot of people come to the racetrack anymore, or is it you think it's time, or just things going on, or how do you feel about it?
I think the time has some things to do with it. A lot of things nowadays is what everybody wishes they had more of, and that's money. And unfortunately, around local racetracks, these are average people working 40 to 80 hours a week, but still trying to make do of having fun and doing what they love and racing. But I think the pricing and things is just really outrageous these days.
Well, you do mention that, and I missed it a little bit earlier, and I want to kind of talk about it. But back when Jug was helping you guys out and doing things the old school way, it wasn't nothing to go run down to Falloway's junkyard and get some A-arms or a spindle or axle or what have you. And, you could keep your car going for, relatively low cost.
Right.
Maybe it was, we made less money then, so it seems like it was lower cost. But in today's standards, it definitely would be, being able to just go pick up an A-arm that would get you back in the race, or a tie rod, or different things, motor parts. It didn't have to be something out of the book, or it didn't have to be high dollar, going to the machine shop with everything. And it is a different time now. And I think we're seeing that, and I think that's something that's kind of a little bit weighing on everything we're doing.
Right. I would agree with that, especially our cruiser class, and the street stocks nowadays are crazy to me. You can't take a full body, full frame car anymore and run with cruiser or street stocks. They're all these tube chassis and either 3 lengths and all this stuff, and the motor in them's what we used to call our Pro Street, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I wish we could fall back to the basics of racing, where we can do this and everybody can have fun and enjoy it without spending a fortune.
And it is, man. And I'm one of those guys where I'm sitting in that same boat, because I've got a full frame, full body. I mean, it's got all the stock body panels on it, full frame car, and it runs okay. It'll still go around the racetrack. There's no reason why it won't. But you're right. It's not a tube chassis. It's not clipped car, aluminum sides. It's just not.
You're right.
And that's hard.
I mean, just take a look at Bill Mormon. He's a former, I don't even know how many championship he has out there, still trying to run a full body car in this cruiser class, and he's 3 or 4 maybe. And I don't know, I think that would make me as a promoter turn back and look what have we done, or how can we lower this cost back? Now I know everybody has these high dollar parts and building new cars and all this stuff, so I don't know if we could ever really go back, but I think there should still be some way that we can cut some of the cost out.
Right, and I think it's important that we remember that there's nobody probably out there racing today that has more laps or time around that racetrack than Bill Moorman. I mean, the old man knows that place like the back of his hand. Still can drive. I mean, and he occasionally stepped into a bomber this year and did pretty well in it. But you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where it was a dominant car. That old 25 car, and still around right now, but it's hard for even a guy that knows how to get around the place to compete.
Right. And just like the Bomber and Rusty Boat, there's not a lot of difference to me. I think we've seen one Bomber car run with the Rusty Boat and finish top 3. I think we could do away and combine that class and then pay out more throughout the field. And I think people would like that. I mean, we've only got, 4 classes we run? Mini stocks, Bomber, Rusty Boat, and Cruiser.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the grandstands is paying $10 to $12 to watch 4 classes. And I think if we could combine the Bomber and Rusty Boat and bring in big modified races or these crate lates or full-blown lates, I think we would see the atmosphere back like it used to be. I know personally, I wouldn't like to go watch 4 just regular classes every week. And I've heard that time and time again outside of the racetrack. It's like, why do I want to go out there? And I'm like, well, you're right. The atmosphere ain't there, and you're paying $10 or $12 to watch 4 classes and go home. I think Misty and Jimmy, they got some big plans for 2019. So hopefully they can discuss that later, and we'll see what this year brings.
Well, I want to stay on that topic for just a minute, and just like you were saying, your Rusty Boat and your Cruiser class, your Rusty Boat and your Bomber class, fairly close. Mm-hmm. One is, quote unquote, a 305 class. The other one you can run 350s in, more stock than not. But I think where a lot of times people have said this, that, especially when you run the Rusty Boat cars and the Bombers back to back on a night, didn't we just see them?
Yes.
Isn't it the same cars we just watched, just different numbers and different colors? I've heard that several times myself, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have class breakup, because absolutely, you should have different tiers of classes
right.
at some level. But again, isn't it get to the point to where cruisers are far enough out ahead that they're not going to come back, but you've got classes that are super close still.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And I think the Rusty Boats and Bombers, you could combine them and either call them Bombers or Rusty Boats and bring back like a pure stock class. Or I know the street stocks is far and few between nowadays without, I think most of them run the UMP series now and the bodies and all that. But I think we could either maybe even create another class for beginners and let the Bombers come to Rusty Boat where it's actually just a true, kind of like we did the Enduro, a stock class, but maybe do a full body car and run a 305 or 350 and pretty much just pop the windows out and put a roll cage in.
Well, if everybody will remember, that's kind of how the Rusty Boats class started way back when. When they originally created that, I think it was running for just a trophy only, and then maybe added $100 to it at one point, but it was $100 in a trophy. And everybody running, minimal cage, full body cars, shop built motors, X amount of whatever they were, but they had to be stock, and really competitive class.
Right.
And that was when Cruiser even started out sort of that way as well, and then it moved up a little bit, got a little closer to pure stock. But do you see, even in your time around the racetrack, do you see these cycles in classes to where everything advances up to a point and then it starts back at 0 and then starts advancing through the line and then starts back at 0?
Yes, I do. I think to me, cruisers right now would probably be our street stocks. When I can remember when Clint and them ran, Rusty Bolts would be your cruiser now, and I guess Bomber would be your Rusty Bolts. And I don't know, you hear people saying they can't afford this or they can't afford that, so they try to drop down a few classes, and then 2 or 3 years later, they're right back to where they was, and having trouble getting to the track or building a race car. And I think a lot of it falls back to the promoters at the different racetracks. To me, I think there should be one set of rules for both racetracks, 3 racetracks. That way these people that can and want to can go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Saturday and Sunday, whatever they want to do. And I just don't think we have that right now.
Well, I think the way you're phrasing it there is that you're right. Guys can drop back down, but you're in a position now. I think where we are currently, just in a sort of a position that you got to spend money to go forward, or you got to spend money to go backward.
Right.
And I think that it's hard to do either one, because eventually, if you spend money to go forward, you're just going to have to keep spending to go faster. If you spend the money to go backward, eventually you're going to have to keep spending money to get back up to where you were when you originally started.
Right. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those discussions where and being the benefit of being around this for 20 plus years, I've seen when Cruiser started, I saw when Rusty Bolt started, when Bomber started, and it gets to that point where, we're not dogging anybody, right? Right. Hey, a track promoter can run his or her track however they feel,
right?
And they've got to do what's best for them to make the money that they need to make. I mean, that's the whole point, and we get that. But then again, you're right. If we could get on the same page enough to where we can go, you're right, start Friday night, and you can go out and race. Come home, don't have to change relatively anything, go race Saturday night. Same thing on Sunday. Saves a lot of money that way.
Yes, it does. It saves the people money, time. All they got to do, maybe if they like to, is wash it and whatever they want to do to the tires or anything like that, or oil change. I think they'd like that.
And I think you're correct, man. But before we get in too far deep into that, and we don't, like I said, we don't want to get off in a ditch to where we're dogging anybody, because again, I enjoy racing no matter where it's at, and I enjoy going to Windy Hollow. I enjoy going to Cedar Ridge. I enjoy going to Western Kentucky Speedway. Different sets of rules, but I'd still enjoy going each night. So
right.
That's the main thing we got to remember there. One thing I do want to ask you about real quick, I want to circle back a little bit, and you've talked a little bit, and you've named some names, man. You've named some of the big hitters. If you guys want to think about it like this, but from your years of watching racing and being involved in it, who's some of your favorite drivers, man, and what sets you on fire about them?
I've always watched, of course, my uncles, Clinton Cabot, Chad Boone. He was always one of my favorites to watch. I liked the figure eight. I like Junior Horn in that. Dwayne Richardson. I mean, Jeff Macy. They've always been about the fans as well. They like to win, and of course that's pretty much what we all do in racing. But I think they always come back to the fans, whether they're cheering for them or booing for them. But who would be some other? Of course, my brothers, every time they've hit the racetrack, I would cheer for them. Alan Slayton, him and John Driscoll, Mike Driscoll, they'd always put on a good show on the cruiser.
I'm telling you what. The original Modoc and Motorsports there.
And then in the past few years, the modifieds, which I've helped out Tyler nicely, and some of the guys, the local competition we have that can travel around these bigger racetracks and bigger names and compete in the top 5, if not to win. I think that's saying something about our community. Mm-hmm. Tyler Nicely, Josh Harris, Gabriel Kirtley. I mean, he's top 3, top 5, I think, up in Illinois a few times. So we like traveling around to some of the bigger races and just cheering on our local guys. Trent Young from Hopkinsville or Clayton Miller, any of them. I've always liked watching them. And even when the Illinois guys come down to Kentucky, I know when Billy Ayler done the Bluegrass Bash, Jeff Leka and all them guys would come down, and them was some big races back then. To me, I don't think we have anything like that to bring in the top guys of the modifieds or late models or anything like that. Which I hear that a lot as well, is if we could bring in some of the bigger cars or faster cars, whatever you want to say there, I just think we'd have more people to. They see this show one week and then it makes them want to come back for more.
Right.
And I've had several people from never been around racing, and I've brung them out there and they've watched racing and they're like, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm like, well, let's go to Tri-State Speedway, the sprint cars or anything like that, and see a top of the show, which I'm not dogging any of the local racetracks, but the top dog shows, Tri-State, Eldora. I've been to Florence a few times and Lawrenceburg. They're top-notch facilities. They take care of the people, take care of the drivers, and the fans.
Right.
And they loved it. And then there's some people you can bring out there and be like, hey, this ain't just for me. I mean, you're watching cars go around in circle. And I'm like, well, okay.
It does seem pointless to some people.
Yes.
I will agree. It does. They don't quite get what you're trying to do out there.
Right. And the community's never, I feel like the community's gotten away from the racing. I can remember they be in the newspaper or anything like that, and I'm seeing it come back a lot more in different ways. I mean, you guys do the podcast, or now we have, 2 or 3 radio shows going on, and of course the Motorfest coming back. I think that will help out a lot.
Well, the thing about it is, man, is it is a fine line you have to walk, and we appreciate your comments on that. But it is a fine line you have to walk where you'll go to a Tri-State Speedway, which Tri-State Speedway is one of the top 10 dirt tracks in the nation. I mean, it is consistently, and they show why every year. And if you've never been there, it's a great facility. Again, not dogging any other racetracks around here. Love our local tracks, but Tri-State Speedway, when they bring in the World Outlaw sprint cars, the late model Hell Tour, I could see where if somebody would come and watch one of those shows as their first show, it is going to be hard to live up to that situation. You know what
Yes.
I mean? With I guess with a cruiser class or rusty boat class, it's just different.
Right.
But that's what you got to remember. It's different.
Right.
And I can see where somebody could, be like, so why don't you have those cars here? Well, that is a good question.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we have those cars here? And I think those are the ones of the questions that we consistently try to answer.
I think so too. I mean, the late models used to run out there at Windy Hollow on a weekly basis, and I just don't think there's enough support for that class around here anymore. And Misty and them's, they've brung in the late models a few times, and I think if you look back, you could tell in the stands. I mean, I think we stand in room only, or having people move over and scoot in together, and you always hear the compliments on that, and I think that helps the atmosphere a lot, and then it gets people talking around town or wherever they're from. I'm pretty sure we had a guy from Oregon last year just stopping in. He traveled a lot of races, and he was in town and wanted to come out there and watch. And at the end of the night, he's like, I kind of like this. It's old school. It was just our main 4 classes that night. And I was talking to him at intermission, and he's like, it's pretty cool. It brings back the old times of the low cost to get in, and still see good side-by-side racing. And he said the facility was nice and the well-ran show. And he said sometimes you can go to some of the bigger tracks and not have a good racetrack and not a good show. So I don't know what else we could really do to bring the atmosphere back.
You were talking about the late models, and I think you're right that late models are not new. I mean, they've been around since the 70s, the late 70s, and changed over the years, obviously. But, one of the top dirt classes there is. It's pretty much the top dirt class there is besides sprint cars. And, it's very, very expensive to run them.
Right.
But on that fact that, Paducah, Kentucky Lake, Nebo, Clarksville, a lot of times had late models a lot, every week. And you're right. I think for some reason it shifted away. And this area in particular here, and you draw from here a 2-hour circle, 2.5 hour circle, and we just don't have the supported late models that you used to have.
Right. And it's slowly going down with the modifieds, I feel like. These guys, they want to support the local tracks, but yet they have to count on car counts to be up as well to run these local tracks. And you see a lot more go 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours away just to run with, top notch guys, and maybe not as much money as some of the bigger shows, but they're still pulling 4 to 5 hours away just to keep up with points or whatever they're running for.
Well, do you see that as guys it's just losing support, or is it to where we're getting into more series based with modifieds to where, like AMS is doing, or, different stuff, UMP, and you've got series based and they run in a particular area. And is it people follow the money, or is it, they don't necessarily are going to go to a local track to run for $1,000 when they can go up here and run for 3 or 4? But then again, there's 50 cars where they're at the other track there might be 20.
Right. I think that plays into both hands there. A lot of people like to follow the series or a series and try to stick with that because, their main point is to win and try to get a championship. And some of them, they still try to support their local tracks, and I think they fall back to the money game sometimes.
Right. Well, and we talk about those guys, and you mentioned them. Josh Harris comes back and races at Windy Hollow and Cedar Ridge. Same thing with Trent Young, Clayton Miller. Nicely. These guys are competing most of the time. You're right. They pull on a Thursday night, pull 4 hours away to, Granite City, Illinois, or Lawrenceburg, or some, Farmer City. And it's one of those things where I think it gives them a freedom to go these places, being able to drive these cars the way they do. But also, it's one of those things where it's just something different maybe. And yeah, they want to support it, but again, most of these tracks don't run modifieds on a weekly basis. Some don't.
Right.
Around here. So I don't know if it's one of those things where they just want to try something new, and then give back some, or they, there's a need to branch out. It's not a have to situation. It's a need to.
Yeah, I think I know I would as a driver, especially if I could run one of them cars. I would still like to venture out and run these tracks with some of the top guys in the nation, Mike Harrison or Jeff Leake. Any of them guys they're always on their game. And Mike Harrison, 7-time champion now?
Yep.
And if you can go and beat him, then you're doing something. And that makes you look good. It makes your community look good back home. And I just don't think we bring around big enough races, or I don't guess the pay would. I know the payout counts, but sometimes you scare off your local guys. If you bring in these big guys, it'd be a hard decision to make. Do you want to bring in some more guys, top-notch guys, and scare off your local racers?
Well, I think there's a couple of things at play there. And, a lot of times that we thought you don't get better but by racing the best. You know what I mean? Ric Flair always, if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man.
Right.
So, and when you think about you think about some of this stuff, it's these guys coming in who are multi-time national champions and multi-time series champions. To me, there's a part of me that's like, hey man, if I can throw my hat in the ring and I'm up with that guy, like Kenny Wallace coming in.
Right.
If you can race and you outrun Kenny Wallace, hey man, you've elevated yourself. I mean, you didn't do any detriment to him because he's got a reputation. Same thing
Right.
with some of these guys. But again, you might have a guy who is competing locally, who's running every week. Maybe he's running a couple of year-old chassis. Maybe he's not, his stuff, he hasn't been able to, maybe not afford to update to all the 2018 stuff or whatever.
Right.
And, by golly, he's holding on and he's having a good time. But I could see where a guy like that might be like, you know what, I'm going to park it for the week. We'll go down there and watch, but I'm going to leave it in the trailer because it's not, I can't do it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, and I've heard that time and time too again when Kentucky Lake was running. I mean, you got to think about the guys that come down there. You had Kyle Strickler, Nick Hoffman coming from North Carolina and all these other places. And some of the local guys were like, I'm not going down there. I'll run Cedar Ridge or Paducah. And I don't know. I don't know if it's the names that scare them off or just don't want to use up their equipment and waste their money and time, and they can still go having a good time just watching.
Right. But, I mean, again, I can see it both ways.
Yeah.
And there's been nights, myself personally, different guys coming in, and you'll be a hot dog from another track, and he'll show up at your track that night.
Yeah.
And you're like, crap. Well, I already know I'm back a spot now, because I can't beat that guy. Then again, you're never going to know till you try.
Right.
You're never going to know until you guys get going down the front straightaway or back straightaway together. You never know what could happen. Anything can happen on a race night.
Right. And, I mean, the race ain't over till the checker flag comes out, so I think we've seen plenty of times this year the leader lead the whole race, and then the white flag comes out, and he messes up or blows up, flat tire, and some of the other guys get to win, and you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you don't. And that's some of the best times. I mean, yeah, it's great to see people who, work on their cars, make sure their stuff's top-notch and everything like that. It makes sense that they're up there contending for the win.
Right.
But when you get to see, something happens and three guys get into it, all three of them got broken axles. Well, the fourth place guy who thought he never had a chance to win, man, is gonna get a shot at it now, and that's pretty cool too. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want detriment to happen to somebody else, but hey, again, fate's fate. You know what I mean? Things happen.
Right, and I did like what Misty and Jimmy done this year when they did the A and B features. I think that was some of the best times this year, watching people in the stands cheering for ones that's usually fourth or fifth. Nick Brooks picked up a feature win, Carson Brooks, and you could tell on their faces that's what they wanted. And knowing they ran third, fourth, or fifth the weeks before, and then have that chance to win, I think it meant a lot to them.
Well, my thing is, and people might be like, well, it was a B feature, whatever, and this and that and the other. There's people out there that will say that.
Right.
Man, I'm going to tell you what, a win's a win.
Yes.
It don't matter if there's 50 cars on the track, if there's one car on the track, a win's a win. And they can call you whatever they want to at the end of the day, but they got to call you the winner. So if I'm taking the trophy and the money home, no matter B featured, D featured, Z featured, I don't care. As long as it's, hey, that's a win.
Right. Win to win.
And it is, and that's going to elevate somebody's spirit. It's going to elevate their program, because I was in the B feature that night, and here's the thing, there was some pretty heavy hitters still in the B feature.
Yes, there was.
Really good cars, and guys that they wanted it, they were hungry, they wanted that win, and here's your chance, and they went for it, and Nick picked up the win, and it was a great confidence booster for those guys. Just his first full season in that car, and was able to go on and run the A feature and did pretty well in that as well.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I think both of them did they both end up running the A feature?
I think so, yeah.
And they still, I think, top 5 in that. So I know that was definitely a confidence booster for them.
Well, buddy, I'm going to go ahead and take another break real quick. I want to come back on the other side and then continue our discussion here.
Alrighty.
All right.
You know Fairview IT Management is your one-stop shop for your home computing needs. But did you know they are also one of Owensboro's leading business automation services, offering network automation, system administration, and remote managed support? Fairview IT Management can become your help desk to help you reduce staffing costs and keep your bottom line low. Give Gabriel Kirtley a call at 270-228-4339 for all your business technology needs.
All right, we're back from the break, man. Carl, one thing we were talking about before the break is the talent around this area, and we've mentioned several names being a lot of the modified guys, these days. But, you think back the way it used to be, and a lot of guys were racing around here that eventually made it up through the ranks into the NASCAR and things like that. And, right around the 70s and the 80s, we had a lull period of time where a lot of guys weren't doing that anymore. But and maybe not so much the NASCAR level these days, and not that we've ever run out of talent, because we haven't, but if you can talk about maybe your thoughts on it, of some of that talent we have today, and you mentioned that about guys that are going 4 and 5 hours away and driving to St. Louis, running the Dome race, and going down to Volusia, right here from Owensboro, Kentucky, and putting on a show and showing people who they are.
Yeah, the main ones that come to my head is, of course, Tyler Nicely and Josh Harris, Gabriel Kirtley. Paul Miles has been down to Florida a few times. Everywhere they go, they're always there to contend, and they always know where they came from. I've heard them mention Windy Hollow and their home tracks when they win up in the big races, and I think that means a lot to the people that's around this racing community to get that kind of support 5 or 6 hours away. And I think some of the younger ones, I know Josh is kind of getting up there. He's been around a long time, and I think Tyler, he's young, and I think he's got a full career ahead of him. He keeps up the way he has been, and hopefully there'll be a few more young ones. One that comes to my head from Cedar Ridge is Darren Openchain. This boy, very talented, and I've seen him compete with some of the best down there at Cedar Ridge this year and past year.
Well, yeah, and you can talk about him for sure, because if you take a snapshot of just the last 2 years, where he's come from 2016 season through the 2018 season, man, that dude's setting it on fire down there.
Yes, he is. And he was battling Kenny Wallace and Josh Harris and all them guys for the win. I think we have a lot of talent still around here that maybe just don't get noticed as much.
Right, and I think there's some waiting in the wings, and that's good. I see that as a good thing, because while these guys are making a name right now, in your Harrises and your Youngs and all them, and these guys are the crop that's in there right now making the names. But there's guys that are racing with these guys when they come locally, just like we said earlier. Racing some of these guys, getting out there, get your car out there, match up to them a little bit, see how you fare. That's how you learn. And if these guys are getting around there 2 seconds faster than you are, maybe you need to follow them. Maybe you need to figure out what they're doing. It's not all just horsepower. It's not all just torque. A lot of it's driving. It's finesse, and that's how you get better.
Yep. Another one that comes to mind was Charlie Medford. He's picked up a lot. Hunt Gossams are from around the area, and he's picked up, I don't know how many wins he picked up this year. I seen he win at Tri-City. So, he came from around here, and he's up there competing with top levels.
Right, and these guys, a whole lot of years left to race.
Yes.
They're really young and already doing great things.
Yes, and I think they both started in go-karts, so they got to have to be precise and run consistent laps. So that's one of the key things.
It is a lot different coming from a go-kart to an open wheel modified. That's for sure. So,
and I think they've both done excellent jobs at that.
Well, one thing I want to ask you real quick here is, you kind of made it into working into racing and things like that, and coming from crew member driver and things like that. But, do you have any advice for some of these kids that are out there, and we see them every week, right there at Windy Hollow, You can think about the junior fan club kids and things like that. But, do you have any advice to these kids to, get them off their cell phones and get them interested in racing and maybe they can make something out of themselves in the world of racing?
Right, and that's a big factor these days, cell phones or electronics, period. And if kids would go out and play in the dirt and make the racetracks like I know me and my brothers used to do, we watch NASCAR, or we watch old racing tapes, or if they're out at Windy Hollow, just stop and talk to the drivers, and you never know what drivers out there do for you. Pack the track with them or anything like that. I know I've done that a few times. Brayson, he likes to flag already, so hopefully he'll be up there and he can take my spot one day. So if you ever want to drive the race car, or if you're dreaming of working at there, just talk to the guys out there and see if you can shadow them or something one night.
Well, you guys are pretty accessible, in between the races and things like that. A lot of times you can find you hanging around the pit office and can't miss that UMP dirt car shirt, but you can find a lot of track crew and things like that, people to talk to. Obviously, the same thing with the pits, right when if you can talk to the drivers. One thing I do want to ask about it, are we doing enough as drivers and crew and things like that to get fans more involved? Or is there more we could do? Maybe like 1 hour every week that the pits are open for people to come in and talk to people or get autographs, whatever you want to do. Not necessarily just having a dedicated fan appreciation night one time a year or
Right.
twice a year, but something like that. Is there something more we can do to get fans involved?
I think we could. I think a autograph session or just a meet and greet, whatever we could do before the race or at intermission, and interact with them more instead of just paying their money, watching the race and go home. And I think a lot of them, especially the younger generations, would like to talk to some of the drivers that they look up to and cheer for every week and give them a perspective from the driver's seat, and maybe the drivers can learn something from the fans that they want to see. So I think we could do something more with the fans.
Well, I think that's the most important thing is, when we think about it, and we see these signs on Facebook sometimes that says, drivers, you are the show, thank you or whatever. That's absolutely true. But you're a show to those fans. And
Right.
those fans are the reason why we're able to do what we can do week in and week out.
Right. It's if the fans ain't in the stands, then there's not even a reason to be racing.
Other than bragging rights, maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's not going to be any money.
Yeah, there ain't gonna be no money, and I mean, other drivers are gonna talk about it, but none of the fans. If they're not there, then they're not gonna run and tell this person, "Oh, you should have seen this race," or "You should have seen this race." And I don't know, if we don't keep the fans and younger generations in it, I don't think we would have much support in the future.
Right. And you're not going to get those guys that want to build a bomber car or rusty boat car, get into a mini stock when they're 10, 12 years old, you
Right.
know. And that's important to where sustainability is what this sport's built upon. You
Right.
know, I mean, yeah, you can run, one guy can run it for 30 years, but if there's not 3 or 4 more guys coming in behind him, that once that guy retires, that's it. I mean, there's no spot. There's just an open spot there. It's a hole.
Right.
And, I think that not only doing things to keep the fans interested, I think a lot of it goes on the promotional side too. Getting word out to the fans and things like that to get them or get people talking about things at your racetrack to bring people in.
Yeah, and I think we kind of missed on that this year. We started out as Friday nights, and then we went into Sunday night racing, then back to Friday nights, and I think there was just a lot of miscommunication, and people had plans already planned out for them days, and then they couldn't make it, or I know football started up, and that killed Friday nights. But I think we could work on that a little bit more, and I know Misty and them's worked with general admission prices, the $20 car load, or whatever else they do out there. I mean, they try to cut back on some of the cost and keep the fans into it.
Well, and again, that's important because, if people don't know, or if they're confused about what days you're running, that does have an effect on it.
Yes. So hopefully this year we'll have one date that we set and we race on. Because even as a track official, it got confusing at times, and rainouts didn't help any. Trying to find weekends to do that, or big shows going on, missing them, try to work with that. So hopefully this year they can get a schedule and we can try to go by that.
Well, leading into this, and it's one of the things that kind of goes hand in hand with that, but, you're a young gentleman, grew up in the social media age. I remember when cell phones only made phone calls, but, I don't know if you guys see it, especially being, on the inner workings of a racetrack, but how social media has affected racing here locally.
It has its good side and it has its bad side. I've been on a couple of the bad sides. No hard feelings anywhere. It's just my opinion, and they have their opinion, and I go on. But sometimes people take it to heart, I guess you could say, and you lose friends or you lose your buddy, whatever else happens. But it can be a good thing on the promotion side of it, and people talking about it. Hey, come to Wendy, or they post the videos, and I know you guys and Barry Barnes, they go around talk to the drivers. I've heard a lot of good things about that, and I think that helps a lot.
Well, I think it does help as well, and I think it's a new avenue that a lot of times, people haven't done that for a long time. And occasionally somebody will walk through and maybe record a little something with drivers and things like that. But having dedicated, time, and I know it's hard on a race day, and a lot of people are like, oh, God, I got to get an interview, man, I'm just trying to work on my car. But when you think about it from the side of, not only are you promoting where you're at, but you're promoting yourself, your sponsors, main thing right there, the sponsors,
Yes.
and everything in your racing program. If we can get everybody to maybe just donate 10, 15 minutes of their time during a weekend, I mean, it's going to elevate the sponsor game because they're getting people's names out there that maybe they didn't just see it on the side of a car.
Right.
And it's going to get out there where you can kind of talk about them a little bit, and hey, it keeps the sponsor happy. That keeps the sponsor in the sport.
Right. And, I mean, that goes all the way up to NASCAR. That's the first thing they say when they step out of the car is, I'd like to thank this sponsor, that sponsor. And, yeah, I mean, it trickles all the way down to your local dirt track. If you can't get the sponsors, then you're eventually, unless you're just wealthy, but without the sponsors, it's hard to keep anything going.
It is exactly that. And, we've talked about that a couple of times on this episode of how costs have just risen so much for racing, just in any class you're trying to run. It's one of those things where sponsor money is now is more important than ever.
Yes, and to me, it's not even on just as the race cars. It's for the tracks itself as well. I know the sponsorships through the years has winded down, and not very many wants to sponsor the racetracks anymore. And they have to have money to keep that thing going as well. Concession stands or equipment for the track, paying their employees, or whatever else happens there. People want more money to win and all this, but it's hard to do just coming out of their pockets or general admission gates. Luckily, we do have some pretty good sponsors and help them every week.
And it is because, I mean, they see them. You might have a sign on the back straightaway. You might have a sign on the back of the grandstands or something. But, making sure when Jake's up there announcing, or Barry or somebody, they're running through those lists of sponsors. We'd like to thank them for coming on board this year, and they've been a big help to us. And, make sure you get down at whatever address they're at and see what they've got for you. Maybe you're looking for a remodel of your house, or maybe you're looking for a new toilet or whatever. You just never But it's important that it all goes hand in hand. And money in the sport, again, that's what this sport's driven by, is money.
Right.
And sadly so, but it is what it is. Any hobby, but I think anybody will tell you, besides maybe duck hunting and golf, this is one of the most important or expensive hobbies that you can be involved in.
Yes, it is. And I think Jake plays a big key part into that, and I think he's always on top of naming the sponsors, or if they're actually out there, he'll try to get an interview with them or just talk to them. But I think he keeps pretty good tabs on the sponsors out there.
Well, not only that, but when Jake's announcing, and especially Barry the same way, you know, the thing about those guys are they sound happy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I've been to tracks before where it's just robotic, and they're like, you know, go see so and so, so and so, go see so and so, so. You know, people are like, I ain't listening to this. What is this? You know, but when somebody's up there being animated about things and being, you know, happy and has a nice tone of voice, people are more inclined to listen.
Yes.
And again, that reflects well on a sponsor.
Yes, it does. And Jake and Barry, and of course Billy and Jay, they done it for years. And I think that was a good thing we've had out at Windy Hollow was the announcers out there. They keep the fans entertained and the sponsors rolling off or whatever they can come up with. I think they've done good.
Well, you know, we talked about a few minutes ago about Facebook and different things like that. I don't know how you feel about it, but I mean, sometimes it's a good thing. People, you know, going live on races and things like that. Whereas I know a lot of people will say that, yeah, you didn't pay the admission fee to get in and you get to watch the race for free or something. But I kind of see where at a lot of points it goes to that's just free promotion of your racetrack, especially if it's some, you know, one of those wild races. You know, people are going to see that on Facebook.
Right. And they could be 3 or 4 hours away and be like, hey, let's make a trip down there one weekend. Or it just keeps the racetrack promoting outward. And like last year, we started out not the best racetrack, and then it progressed through the season, and then you eventually started hearing that again. Hey, the Jimmy and the crew's been doing a good job and all that. So I think that helps. Not everybody can make it every weekend. Money issues or on vacation, whatever it is. I think that helps too. Be like, hey, did you see this race? I think one I heard last year was Cole Falloway and Jeff Macy. They was always side by side, and they're like, hey, let's go watch this. Because you never know who's going to win. And then you always had the battle between Dockery or Sullivan or Mormon and Chris Bunch and them. You heard it every week. And I think they done good of keeping it on the racetrack for the most part. And then they come back next week and they start all over again. And I think people liked watching that.
They did, and I couldn't go every week to Windy, and the thing about it was I'd like to catch that when I could. You know,
Right.
heck, I'd be at work at 9 o'clock at night on break, and be able to watch live races.
Right.
You know, at least a live feature from Windy Hollow. You know, and I'm not saying giving away your product, you know, for free every time or anything like that, but I think occasionally that does bring some interest because I mean, you look at these views on Facebook, people. Dumber videos, I mean, just mindless videos get 100,000 views. I mean, why couldn't we get 15, 20,000 views for one of these awesome dirt track races?
Yes, I agree.
Man, we kind of talked about a little bit the state of racing, and you're on the inside of a little bit of things that happen. And I mean, what do you? You kind of said we're a little bit different than the old school, but it's kind of circling back a little bit, maybe ebb and flow. But how do you feel we are with our programs here? You know, we kind of covered a little bit, but do we need to elevate things, or do we need to start looking at different avenues to get things in here, get more fans in here?
I think it could go both ways, but for the most part, I think we need to get more fans involved and keep them involved and work with each other more on a lot of things.
Well, I think we do need to do that, and I think we need to start exploring avenues. Like I said, we've covered maybe combining some classes, maybe fixing some classes that are out of hand, getting everybody on the same page. But you know, again, we covered maybe a partial schedule works to where you can start bringing in big shows every week or every other week or however, whatever your schedule allows,
Yeah.
instead of maybe just running the same thing every weekend. But again, it's two different models, and both seem to work. We
Right.
just got to figure out what's working the best for where you're at.
Right. And I mean, sometimes it was one car winning every week. They'd walk the dog on the rest of the field, and even as a flagman, I don't even like watching that race. So I know how the fans feel, and then as the features wind down, I look back and the grandstand's gone because they already know who's going to win or has been winning. So that, and I think one thing, not only us and some of the other tracks, is time efficiency. Everybody don't want to sit there 8-9 hours.
Right.
We try to keep it 4 hours or so. We hate being there past 10 o'clock, and I know that happens a lot. But we try to, Jimmy, he's called meetings before the races, and hey, this is what I want to do, or last week wasn't such a good week, and we'll look back at what we did wrong or what we could do better. And Jimmy's always trying to get us out of there and still run a good show.
Well, I think that's important because, while, and you can look at it like this too, is you're like, we don't like being there past 10 o'clock. Well, you've been there since 10 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean,
Right.
It's not, you didn't just show up at 7 and leaving at 10. So you've had a 12-hour day already at this racetrack, and 9 times out of 10 in the hot sun, and it's been a long day thing. But again, attention spans these days, and this goes back to keeping people involved, is attention spans are way down. I mean, people, you can't hardly keep them, with you for 10 seconds, much less 10 hours.
Yes.
So that's one of those things where, efficiency is the key. And again, there's some variables that inevitably have to happen. You have to have a little bit of track prep. That has to happen.
Right.
That just is what it is. I mean, people have to expect that. But, 74 caution laps, let's get it taken care of. You know what I mean? However, we got to do that. And that's one of those things where nobody just wants to watch cars just pace around for 20 minutes. That really loses the crowd, and that's not.
Yes.
Again, that's not a dig at anyone. It just happens, and
Yes.
and
that unfortunately drives the crowd away for the next week. They're like, oh, I don't want to go out there and sit 5 or 6 hours, and I don't know. We've heard it time and time again, and so hopefully we can work on that some more. I think the last part of the season we ended up getting that pretty good, and hopefully it will continue.
Well, it takes it takes practice. Nobody's perfect at running a racetrack, but you've got to go back every week and look at what worked, what didn't work, how can we change that for the next week, and keep moving.
Right, and I feel like we've done a good job at that, and Jimmy and them, they're always striving to find better ways to do this and do that, and what can we cut out, what can we do to keep the fans in, or just like this year they bring in the bouncy houses, and half the time we would hear and see people come in and do these bounce houses for the kids and stay for the heat races and leave because they're not really into the racing, but the kids like the bouncy houses and watch some of the racing. So I don't know, there's a lot of different things we could do, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do want to ask you real quick is you put your promoter hat on now, and is there things that you'd like to see bring to this area that we can, that could be specialty races or specialty classes or different things? There's stuff that you'd like to see going forward in the future that maybe we don't have here right now, but who knows what could happen.
Yeah, Jimmy's always asking me what else can we do out here, and I think it could be any of the racetracks around here. Is you see these 24-hour races, and you see demolition derbies and school bus races, anything like that. I used to watch a show, Lucas Oil something. They had something on every night at Figure 8, anything like that. The bus races, trailer races.
Mm-hmm.
I think a night of destruction and stuff like that would be fun and keep everybody entertained. Classes, I wish we could spread them out where they're not so close, like the Rusty Boat and Bomber. I would like to see kind of like the Top Dog street stock race used to be, kind of run what you brung, and just hope you brought enough. I've always thought them was entertaining, and I've heard that several times as well. I know figure eight got mentioned a few times to me. That would play on insurance purposes.
There's nothing like figure eight on dirt, man.
No, there's not. And unfortunately, we've lost some, Junior Horn and all them good guys, but I don't know if anybody would even do it anymore. I've asked Donnie Fair, and he's like, nope, I don't know what I was thinking back then. But,
And that was a guy that won all the time.
yeah.
That's a crazy thing.
I don't know. There's many series out there. You got the AMS for the modifieds, and I've been following the Neesmith Street Stocks, and that's a really good series. And I think they do 5,000 win shows, and I don't know if you can get any less than that, but I think they've always had 30 to 40 cars just for one race.
Right.
So I think something like that would be pretty neat and bring in some, I don't know, top-notch drivers of that class. I mean, we have street stocks, but what do we get usually? 8 to 10?
Yeah.
And these guys bring 30 and 40 cars. That would bring in a big crowd. You know, the AMS series runs the mods. The Summit Modified Nationals for modifieds during the Hill Tour for the late models too. I've seen Cedar Ridge has got 2 of them shows this year. That's pretty good. And I think that would draw a lot of people in. And I mean, the track's been good down there. You hear that a lot. So wish them well down there.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that, you know, people can't forget, and just in the last few years, as track surfaces have been elevated, you know, bringing clay in and not so much field dirt like it used to be, you know, and how the speeds have gone up and the racing has gone up and handling. And it's just phenomenal racing around here.
Yes. And even on the bad nights, like the first one we had this year after the new clay and all that, there was some drivers that wasn't so nice about it. And then you had your other drivers be like, hey, I know it's going to take time, and it come around this season, and I thought we had some of the best races we've had. And then you take places like the Dome that the track's built in a week, and it wasn't the best shape, but you never hear anybody complain about that. And I don't know, I think just because it's a big race, yeah, the track was rough. A lot of stuff got tore up. I'm not dogging anybody, but if you do that to your local tracks, that puts the promoter in a bad spot. And then some of your top-notch drivers are like, yeah, I'm not going to that crap hole or anything like that. Just give them time to work it out. Yeah, you may tear up some race parts, but, I mean, you're in racing for a reason. You ain't going to go home with a car in one piece every night and not tear stuff up.
You can tear them up on a smooth track just like you can on rough tracks.
That's right. And I've seen some of the top-notch tracks be rough. I mean, Eldora and all of them, but you just never hear the drivers complain about it. So to the drivers around here, if the track's rough, yeah, I know it sucks, but I wouldn't go running down that track because it can do a lot of damage.
You're right, it can, and that falls right back on our social media topics. And, you know, it's important to remember that, you know, maybe it's an isolated incident. Maybe it's not normally like this. But 9 times out of 10, if you get to that point and the promoter, you know, he's committed for the night. It's just that hole's going to be there no matter what you do to it. You can go out there and pour concrete in the daggum thing, and it ain't going to fix it. So, you know,
right.
That's the thing. It's sometimes that happens, and you just got to roll with it. And people just got to get through the night best you can, learn how to drive around the hole. You know what I mean? That's kind of your job as a driver, too, is to go where your car's fast and try to stay out of the holes, you know?
Right. And I don't remember who said it, but there was always one guy that could run the bottom in a holy racetrack, had holes and everything else, and he would win every week. And they're like, how do you get through this? He was like, well, there's still moisture in the hose. So if you can set your car up and drive through the hose, you're going to win probably. And that's always stuck with me. And I'm like, well, if the drivers would just either go around it or set their cars up and drive better and go through the hose. I mean, thinking back now, I never heard drivers complain of the track surfaces. This ain't asphalt. It's going to be different every time you hit the track. Mm-hmm. And even asphalt can be rough. So
that's right. I mean, you never know what that weather was, and that affects it. So
yes.
Well, Carl, buddy, we had a daggum good conversation, man. I've enjoyed you being here and talking a little bit about some of the old school stuff too, and some of the old school guys, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yes, thank y'all for having me, and I'm hopefully be back on here.
Well, buddy, and you're welcome back anytime, and we're glad to have you, and appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Let's face it, we love racing and we need to keep those race machines in tip-top shape to stay competitive. That's why we rely on Mach 5 Race Cars and Parts. Located at 2035 West 2nd Street in Owensboro, Kentucky. They specialize in stock cars, but you'll find all the parts you need for your racing go-karts as well. They are your go-to experts for parts, wheels, tires, fuel, and a wide array of other items to keep you on the track. They have hundreds of parts in stock and can special order thousands of others. Give John Hayden a call today at 270-240-5587.
And we're back from the last break there, man. We had a great conversation with Carl, man. I knew it would be, and it was.
It's cool to hear his perspective because, being the flagman, and not only a flagman, he was a racer as well. He took some turns in a car, but we got to hear how he sees things from his unique perspective from the flag stand.
Enjoys being a driver. We learned that more so than a crew member. So he doesn't like the wrenches as much as he does the steering wheel. So that's pretty funny there because I know a lot of guys who'd rather not work on them but just drive them.
Well, if you're out there and you're a race team and you need a driver, hey, Carl could do it for you.
Yeah, Carl could do it, but I don't know. He may not want to trade those. He may not want to trade those racing flags in right now, man. I think he's having a real good time, and I guess it really showed. And one cool thing about it for me is we don't get to talk to a lot of flagmen. We don't get to see what happens in the flag stand and
right.
what he's got to think about, what he's got to see and do, and it's pretty cool how we got a little perspective on that today.
I kind of wish he would have brought his flags with him so he could have given us a private demonstration on how to properly flag.
Yeah.
Because, when you watch him, it's flawless.
Yeah.
Those flags are fantastic.
Anybody can wave a flag, man, but there's a certain skill to it to do it, in a flag stand.
And then double checkers. When he's waving those double checkers, it looks like an absolute pro at it.
Yeah, it does. And
So-
people that get to see those double checkers first each and every week in each race, man, probably pretty much appreciate that.
I bet they do.
I guarantee you they do.
We talk about all the time how we enjoy talking to people who enjoy what they do, and whether it's racing or promotion or whatever, and he does. He enjoys absolutely being that guy, the guy that starts the race, the guy that they look toward, and it's really cool to hear.
It is cool, man. And again, got a little bit of inside perspective, not only on, maybe the inner workings of a racetrack, but also, his family. And again, just like I said at the top of the show, I'm going to ask him about Jug Colley and Clint and C.W. Starrett. And, man, we got some good stories, got a little background on those guys. And everybody, anybody that knows anybody around here.
That's a whole lot.
Knows those guys and what they've done on the racetrack. And he, just like he said, love them or hate them, you knew they were there.
And if you've been to Windy Hollow, you've probably walked by Jug's Corner, stood there for a minute, and it's a pretty cool place to be.
Place to believe.
Believe.
I believe it's there because it's there. You can see the sign right there on the side of the grandstands. But and it's cool, man. That a gentleman like that, raced as long as he did, and up into. I've been in races with Jug Colley. Even myself, back when he helped out and ran a little bit of cruiser stuff way back when for the Slayton team, whenever Easy Buy Racing was around, and could still wheel them cars, man.
I just think it's really cool to see another family legacy. The great families that we have in this area, and I know everybody immediately wants to go back and talk about the Waltrips and the Greens and all that stuff, but let's talk about the Falloways, let's talk about the Macy's, let's talk about the Estises, let's talk about all of these people who make this sport great, and it's just a really cool place to be to see all of this awesome talent.
Well, we talk about racing family, and it means a couple of different things. There is one huge racing family, and then there are racing families.
Right.
And that's never more evident, than today. Third generation drivers and different things like that. That's a cool thing, man. That you've been involved in the sport. And who knows? One day these guys may have kids and they'll be involved as well. 4 generations of the same family, running the same high banks. That's a cool deal.
It is, and it's we hear time and time again, just how awesome it is for, sons and daughters to get to spend time with their family, on and off the racetrack and in the garage working on the cars and learning about them. And it's just it's a really cool place to be. And I'm sometimes envious because when you do have those kind of relationships, I didn't necessarily have the best relationship with my dad. So when I hear stories where, they're talking about, the time they spent, it gets me a little bit.
Right. And as it should. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And it's one of those things where, it's great to see, and that is helping the sport.
Agreed.
I mean, that's the main thing. And it don't necessarily have to be involved in driving. You don't have to be another driver. But those boys still involved with the races week in and week out, and especially, Carl as a flagman, he's still working in racing, on his off time, and, enjoys the heck out of it.
Absolutely.
So that's a cool
Absolutely.
deal, man. A lot of good takes on some things, especially with questions, and I know we bring this up all the time, man, but, in and of himself, of the same opinion, we got to get on the same damn page with these rules. And,
Agreed.
And not only that is time management.
Well, and
We talked about that a couple times.
I say again and again, and it was one of the first comments that I made about racing when you took me to my first couple races. I was like, didn't we just see these cars run? Mm-hmm. Didn't we just see these? What's different? How do I know as a spectator that these cars are different?
And what I tell you, well, now these are the Rusty Bolts. You're like, and?
Right. And as a fan in the stand, that means nothing to me. For you to say, oh, it's a 305 class. As just a spectator watching, that means nothing. Mm-hmm. As a driver, it means everything.
Right.
And I know that the rules and everything, the rule sets are set up for drivers, not spectators. But there's got to be something. There's got to be some give where, as much as I enjoy seeing the battles that he was talking about on the track, with certain drivers just week after week battling it out, give me some variety sometimes. Give me something else to watch. Mm-hmm. And time management, we've talked about that before. When you have these big shows come in, and then they decide to qualify every class.
Yeah.
And you've got a huge draw of cars, and you're qualifying 40, 50, 60 cars. As a fan, I'm like, come on, there's got to be something better. So time management's a huge thing too. So he is absolutely correct. And you are correct as well.
Well, here's the thing, man. There's two things at play here. Qualifying, 9 times out of 10 at these tracks, and you can go to pick one. And, it's hard. While we do have announcers, and when there's cars on the track, you can't hear what they're saying.
No,
and you can barely hear a time, and most of the time they're trying to run the cars as quick as they can. When one passes down the back straightaway, the next car's coming out because that car's going to be off the track by the time they get there. But, that's one of those things where most of the time the crowd can't hear it anyway.
Right.
So, I don't think that there's people up there nail biting. There's a few crews and things probably, but people up there nail biting about, oh my God, is it going to be about a tenth a second or 1,000th of a second? You don't have that,
right?
And it's hard to make qualifying interesting.
Sure.
It's just not, unless somebody's plowing up through the wall or something, which is now you've lost a car for the night, so it's not that interesting. You know what I mean? Now you've kind of wrecked something later on, but qualifying's there for a reason. A lot of series have it. But it is what it is. There's two things at play there. But, it's like the same thing. We talked about class differences and things like that. It's kind of like hockey to me. I kind of know what the point is, but I can't tell you, like, when special moves happen and why power play happens and why why they're supposed to help when they're down a guy or two guys. I don't know. You know what I mean? And yeah, somebody be like, what's a power play? And
why is there a squid on the ice?
Right, yeah. Why are people throwing fish and squid and all that stuff in there? There's a point to it.
Right.
I know there's a point to it. And same thing with Rusty Bolts and bombers and cruisers. There's a point to it, but a lot of people don't get it. And again, we're gearing this festival. It's not. It's geared toward everyone who loves racing. It obviously is. You guys are going to be a part of it. You guys are going to come to the racetrack. it's geared toward people who don't necessarily know about racing, don't necessarily understand it.
It would be Wes in June of 2017.
Right. You didn't know what was going on.
No, I had no clue.
You're like, it's all right.
Back then I wouldn't have even said it was all right. Back then I would have made any excuse I could to not go to a racetrack.
And you did.
I did. I made a lot of them. But now there's no place I'd rather be. So, it's just education is there. It's important, and it's how we make new fans.
Right, it is.
It makes me really happy anytime I hear Jimmy Westerfield tell me that I'm kind of a success story for racing.
Yeah.
Because, I was a super huge nerd, still am. But, now I'm a nerd who appreciates racing too.
Right, and, you're not giving up who you are. You're not changing yourself. It's just that you still enjoy certain things, but you now enjoy racing, and stock car racing at that, and especially with, dirt or asphalt. You've been to all the tracks around here in the last year, and it's, it's a pretty cool deal. And, again, even got to see some different stuff, with the World Outlaw Light sprint cars.
Yep.
And it's something you were like, wow, this is crazy, and yeah, it is. And there's a reason why it's been around for almost 40 years.
Super fun.
Actually, it's 40 years this year.
Super fun.
So that's a cool deal. So, again, guys, we just ask the questions, right? We talk about it. We can't fix it personally at this time, but maybe the people that can fix it or can help it are listening.
Right.
And that's the main thing is we're not just two people saying it. I mean, it's quite a bit.
Sure.
It's quite a bit of people. So, again, you guys keep the conversations open. Keep your opinions coming. Everybody's got an opinion. We're going to hit on something one day, and it's going to make it all better.
I hope so. I really do.
Well, hopefully one of those things is the Owensboro Davis County Motorsports Festival.
I know that's going to be great.
It is going to be great.
It's going to be 3 days of non-stop action,
Well, some stop actions. You got to sleep. And
maybe a little. We probably won't sleep. Not much.
no sleep till Brooklyn.
But no, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2019.
All right, don't forget that.
It's going to be a great experience. We're going to have all kinds of stuff happening. So make sure you come out. Make sure you take in some racing with your family, with your friends. Bring new people to the track.
Oh, absolutely, man. Don't wait for the Motorsports Festival. Starting, I guess, some of these tracks start in early April, depending on the weather. Hopefully it happens. Make sure you bring somebody new to the racetrack.
Well, and there was a post, actually, that was on Facebook where a friend of mine and a soon-to-be friend of the podcast, Terry Burden, he's primarily a Cedar Ridge driver, but he made a post, and it was pretty much that if you have a friend or a family member or something that's never been to a race, let him know, and he'll hook you up. And I think that as race fans, if we all did that, once or twice during the season, parted with the $10-12 that it is to get somebody else into the races, I think we could pack the stands a little bit more often.
We can. And you're going to show somebody something who's never seen it before. And, again, it takes all kinds, and it is. But I've never, in my experience over the last at least 20 years, that it's never failed when I take somebody to that racetrack that they don't get hooked on it.
Almost failed with me.
It almost
failed.
But see, that's the thing. I told you from the start. I was like, man, don't judge it just on one time. Go back again one time. Look at Lee Michael Tierney.
Absolutely.
Hated it. Hated dirt. Hated just, I guess this is dumb. And he went back, his buddy and them were like, hey, come on back. Just come back again. By golly, look what he's done in racing.
He's done a lot.
Yeah. And, I mean, there you go. You just sometimes it is one of those things where maybe you just got to give it a time or two.
Agreed.
I mean, heck, there's been people that's listened to songs. You've listened to a song and you hate it. And you're like, man, that song's dumb. But then wait a couple of weeks, you hear it again, and you're like, it ain't that bad. And then another week later, you like it. It's happened. Same thing with movies and things like that.
True story.
It's all relative. So, anyway, we're all relatives.
We are. And speaking of relatives, make sure January 7th, I believe, the first Monday in January, head on out to Skills VR Arcade and support, first and foremost, that business. Get some simulated racing action happening. I need to say that all over again.
Yeah, simulated racing.
Go to Skills VR and get some simulated racing action happening.
Yes.
Or take in one of their other simulations. Play the Extreme Machine. Go into a haunted house, whatever. And while you're there, listen to Hot Laps with Blake Smith. It's his new radio show, internet-based. If you need some help getting hooked up with listening to the show, if you're not there, we can certainly do that, as I am the engineer of it.
Well, one thing about that is, too, and we've heard through the grapevine, we'll know more in the next couple of weeks, but maybe another opportunity for some free Domino's pizza.
Maybe.
So Domino's loves what they're doing and what we're doing here at Bluegrass Motorsports Media, especially with the Hot Lap show being there broadcast live at Skills, and was actually live this week on Mixlr.
It was.
You can find that. You can actually go on Facebook, especially to Bluegrass Motorsports Media and also Hot Lap's Facebook page.
Yep.
And you can hear those episodes. Sit down, man. Listen, give it a listen, man. There's a lot of good stories there. Had a great time. Everybody was in a good mood. Everybody had a great time. A lot of guys standing around talking. Heck, you can hear from this past episode with Josh's experiences in the Dome and up to NASCAR. I guess it's, I don't know, it's Camping World anymore, but whoever's got it. Oh, Gander Mountain Truck Series. NASCAR Gander Mountain Truck Series driver Ben Rhodes got on there and, man, spent the whole day with Blake here in Owensboro.
That's a lot right there.
It was. It was cool, man. And got to talk to him. We all got to talk to him, got our picture with him.
Yep.
And got to sit there and, be close to somebody who, Louisville's own, a Kentucky driver, and has made it to the ranks of NASCAR and is moving up and doing very well. Got to win the race at Kentucky this year, excuse me. And, that's a cool thing. And it was awesome for him to be able to give up his time and just come down here, got to see a lot of the sites. He was able to visit Windy Hollow Speedway, the Dragway. He was also able to visit Kentucky Motor Speedway, even got in Tommy Fisher's F-150, his race truck, and went out there, made about a lap and a half and looped it and made Tommy scream like a girl. So that was a pretty cool deal.
Listen to Tommy and Ben tell that story.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, man. So, big things are happening doing that, and it's a pretty cool thing. And, I think people are enjoying that, and it shows every week that they do it from Skills. And again, going to be every once a month throughout the race season. And also, it's going to move to a new home, which we'll be announcing very soon, right? So, not a new home, but an also a home. So that's pretty cool.
True story.
We did mention Tommy Fisher, and it's one thing we want to promote real quick while we're on the podcast. Coming up this Saturday, when you'll hear this is going to be the 14th when this episode comes out. This Saturday, December the 15th, 2018, Dee's Diner in Owensboro, right there on 4th Street. 1362 East 4th Street in Owensboro. It's Tommy Fisher and Fisher's Key Stop Auto Repair and Towing's 15th annual. 15 years they've been doing this, Racing for Kids Christmas. So, big deal, man. You just come in. Your admission down there to Dee's Diner is you've got to bring a new unwrapped gift for a girl or boy, $20 to $25. So make sure you do that, and that's a cool deal.
It is.
And you can look that up on Facebook. You can look it up on Tommy Fisher's page. Several other people have shared it. We're going to do the same. So make sure you do that. It's for the kids. Racers helping kids. I mean, is that a new thing?
Nope.
No, it's not. And especially not for 15 years now that he's been doing this.
True
That's a cool
story.
thing. So, again, guys, big things are coming. Support it all. Make sure you stay in contact with us. Stay in contact about the Motorsports Festival for sure. If you want to find us on Facebook, Conway Racing Team, Instagram, Conway Racing, Twitter, at Conway Race Team. You can find us www.conwayracingteam.com and also the BentFenderPodcast.com. Our sponsors here, Mach 5 Race Cars, Parts and Carts, Fairview IT Management, Martin's Towing and Recovery, Chad's Barbershop, Glenstone Construction, Slingshot Media, Red Star Graphics, Lori Kimball Home Realty, Hoctane Racewear Graphics and Apparel, and also Willie's Carburetor and Dyno Shop. Sponsors for the festival, our main title sponsors, and we forgot one, is OCTC Tech X program of the community college, a sponsor of the festival, as well as Renegade Race Fuel, 92.5 WBKR, the country station, the racing station, as a matter of fact, and also Higher Octane Racewear Graphics and Apparel. So, big things are happening, lots of sponsors going around. We appreciate every one of them without a shadow of a doubt.
We do. So, that being said, I think we've said everything we need to say this week. We enjoyed Blake and Carl giving us their time, just like we appreciate all of our guests doing.
Right.
We are going to continue to promise you the best quality content we can give you as we can give it to you.
Right.
And
remember the holidays coming up.
Yep.
Loose recording schedule.
Right.
So, getting to the end of the year. And again, we're going to bring you the episodes when we can bring them to you. And we're committed to that.
Yep.
But, again, make sure life doesn't get in the way because we got to take care of the stuff on the home front.
True story. So
it's cool stuff.
Without further ado, I guess we're going to finish out the episode. And for Nathan Porkchop Conway, I am Wes, the U-Haul, Lou Allen. I don't like doing the you have to do that.
I drove the damn U-Haul.
You did. You helped me move.
I hammered down on that thing. It's like you got the extra insurance.
I did.
I was going to jump the Panther Creek, man.
You should have.
I should have. But anyway, I'm Nathan Porkchop Conway. With me, as always, Wes, the U-Haul, Lou Allen. And by golly, we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the best up-and-coming motorsports podcast on the internet. Tune in next week to see who we're trading paint with on the Bent Fender Podcast.